Today's episode is on No One Would Tell, starring Candace Cameron and Fred Savage. It's one of those movies that Lifetime movie fans keep coming back to, and it's not surprising as it starred two well-loved young actors of the time, and it had a really powerful message about domestic and/or partner abuse. It's one of the few TV movies that really stands out to me about teens being in these kinds of harmful, deadly relationships. I'm going to start by recapping the opening scenes and giving a brief synopsis of the movie. And then we'll get into a discussion of my thoughts. Joining me today is my fellow admin of the Lifetime Movie Club fan page, Alphia. So let's begin. No One Would Tell is inspired by a true story. The real girl was named Amy, not Stacy. I'm not sure how closely the movie stuck to the true story, but I can say that it opens with a harrowing scene. A teen boy and teen girl drive up to a secluded lake in a truck. Tagging along is another teen boy. It's clear that the male driver and the girl are in some kind of relationship, but the girl doesn't particularly want to be, at least not anymore. The boy cajoles her out of the car by saying that this is their special place. He says it in a very creepy way that sends chills down your spine. Or maybe it just makes you want to punch him for being so incredibly patronizing and obnoxious. Either way. The opening is a bit of a spoiler. The girl and boy go off together, they get into a bit of a struggle, and the boy comes back alone with blood on his hands. You immediately realize that this movie is the real deal. This is not some afternoon special about just saying no to domestic abuse. Some serious crap has just gone down, and it's not pretty. The movie then goes back in time 5 months. The next scene opens in a gymnasium during a wrestling match. 3 friends are watching the match together and talking about teen girl things. Dating quizzes in magazines, missing episodes of Ricky Lake, that kind of thing. We learn that the main character, Stacy, is an innocent. She has never had a boyfriend before and is embarrassed when her friends wave a copy of a dirty book in her face. But she's got a crush on the handsome wrestler Bobby, and her friends think she should go for it. They set her up, attracting Bobby's attention at the end of the match, and then sitting down in a predictable tactic, while Stacy is left standing. Bobby's eyes go straight to the sweet childlike blonde. He's got this look on his face that's part sexy, part creepy. Stacy has an opportunity to interact with Bobby and his friends later on when she and her bestie have a little night out. I have to say that the scene where the 2 girls are walking down a darkened sidewalk at what looks to be a strip mall is like a scene right out of a true crime episode, which is perhaps appropriate considering what's about to go down in 5 short months. The girls enter a restaurant and walk by a table where Bobby and his friends are having a conversation about flowers and whether girls like to receive them. Stacy is put on the spot when they ask her and her BFF for their opinions. Stacy says she thinks she might like that, to receive flowers. Bobby comes over to her table a couple minutes later, chats her up, invites her to hang out with him after wrestling practice sometime, and ends the scene by handing her, you guessed it, a flower. Seems like a sweet gesture, but first impressions can be deceiving. To sum up, Bobby and Stacy start to date soon after, and he ends up being an abusive boyfriend. Not just abusive, but incredibly controlling, getting on Stacy's case when anyone else so much as even looks at her. The typical red flags girls are told to watch for, basically. But she's young. This is the 90s when people were aware, but maybe not as informed as they are today. And so maybe some things that would be dead giveaways now weren't as noticeable back then. But, people still were pretty informed. It's just, she was young. And even more importantly, she thinks she's in love. And love can do funny things to your mind. There are classmates and friends of hers who see the signs. Her BFF in particular tries to step in, but is perhaps ill-equipped to handle something of this magnitude. The judge at the end, played by no other than Sally Jessy Raphael, gives a stern, unforgiving lecture to the kids who stood by and did nothing as Stacy was being brutalized. But I do have a lot of compassion for her one close friend, who really did try to help. I know what it's like to feel powerless. It's interesting to watch this movie again and pick up on lots of little things I didn't pay attention to in the past, which I think proves that when it comes to Lifetime movies, they can't be spoiled for you. It's not about discovering the ending. It's about the whole experience, to live or relive it with the characters. That's why people can rewatch these movies again and again and they don't get old. I realized there was a lot of cool music in this movie. I was not able to find out the titles using Shazam, which was disappointing. Probably because they're not popular or maybe not even legit songs, who knows. For example, there was something that sounded like your typical 90s rock song in the opening scene, and it sounded so familiar, but Shazam didn't recognize it. There was also the song I've come to associate with this movie because of the lyric No One Would Tell right in it. And there was the song playing during a beach volleyball scene that sounded so familiar to me. I realized it sounded a lot like Sowing the Seeds of Love by Tears for Fears, and I wouldn't be surprised if they mangled that song and created a new one that was merely reminiscent of it so as to avoid copyright infringement. And when I say mangled, I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. They just reworked it so it was barely recognizable except to Tears for Fears fans like me, and, maybe I'm overthinking things, but that's what it sounded like. I'm curious if anyone else noticed that too. And now that I've said it, maybe you'll go back and listen and see what you think. Also, there was an interesting scene during wrestling practice where the coach gives an inspiring speech about how wrestling isn't about strength, it's about control. Sounds significant for a movie about an abusive young man with control issues. I only picked up on the significance of that scene when rewatching the movie years later. I must be a bit of a softie because I find myself wondering what it is that motivated Bobby. Are his intentions pure evil? He's still young, but that's not an excuse for what he did. His actions were absolutely indefensible and awful. Maybe he's just a broken young man who struggles to control his emotions. Maybe he tries to control others to help with the fact that he can't seem to control himself. He does seem to have a questionable relationship with his mother, who kind of just stood by and watched, or sat by and watched while her son was terrorizing this young girl. So, you do wonder what's going on there. So maybe he tries to control others to help with the fact that he can't seem to control himself. Regardless, the relationship is toxic, and as we are soon to find out, deadly. Candace Cameron does a great job of playing a young girl who's just looking for someone to love her. Interesting choice of Fred Savage as the leading actor. He's known for being a baby-faced kid in movies such as Little Monsters, the TV series The Wonder Years, and even as a little boy being read a bedtime story by his grandfather in The Princess Bride. At the same time, his name is Savage, which is interesting, and it fits. I'm going to let Alphia discuss the movie for a bit now because she has some great thoughts about it. Thanks for joining me today, Alphia.
First off, thank you so much for letting me give my review of the movie with you. That's an honor, first and foremost. And I want to introduce myself right quick. My name is Alphia, and I remember being a young girl, watching Lifetime with my mom and my sister, and just some of the movies that my mom introduced us to, and then the movies my sister introduced me to, because me and her are 3 years apart. And I grew up on Candace, watching her because I'm a 90s baby. And she's a phenomenal actress. You could see how she just portrayed Stacy in this movie. And she put so much effort to make us feel for Stacy. I really want to know what things she went through when she was preparing herself to play Stacy. Did she talk to her mother? Did she talk to her friends? The real life person that she was portraying? Let's deep dive, shall we? Okay. Stacy is like any other high school child. She fell for the most popular boy in school. I remember when I was in school and the most popular boy, oh my gosh, I can just imagine if he would have gave me the time of day. But back to Stacy, shall we? So Bobby is on the wrestling team and he's really good and he has potential. And little old Stacy, she's just like, wow, I've been crushing on him for a while. And her friend Nikki was like, yeah, you've been crushing on him for a while. She was like, you mentioned it. She was like, no, I haven't or whatever. It's like a little petty little crush, And they go out one night, her and Nikki. They go to a pizza parlor. And Nikki was like, he's coming over here. I just know how Stacy felt at that moment. Butterflies in your stomach. And you're like, dang, this may happen for me. But who would think, while she was thinking that this would be the same man that she had liked for so long, would be the same man to kill her. Not too much longer from how they ended up dating and the abuse that she endured, and she didn't really have nobody, because it really doesn't talk about her parents, or her mom and dad together. And her mom was dating a guy named Rod, and Rod was not a good guy either, and she was trying to tell her mom about him. And while she's telling her mom about him, she meets the guy that she had been liking for so long, took a chance on her, and she took a chance with him, and he was putting his hands on her. And I just think, Stacy, why did you stay, honey? I wonder. And then I had to think about it. This is the man that she had liked for so long, so he's giving her attention, and she's not even getting it at home. She's not getting the love and the affection that she needs. And her mom is also looking for love and affection too from a guy that's not good either. And it's just like, poor Stacy. She really needed somebody, and I know her friend Nikki was trying to be there. But my question is, when she first got invited to the beach with him, and he was, supposed to be there as they're supposed to, I don't think it was a date or whatever. I don't really know if it was a date or was it they were just mingling or whatever, or just went as friends. But he was talking to some girl named Carla. I don't know if him and Carla had history, or I'm going to go ahead and say it, they probably did, from what you could tell. And because Carla was feeling some type of way because he started feeling Stacy. And I was like, wow, Stacy. He was he invited you to be there with him, even if it wasn't a date or not. And he was talking to Carla. Then he started talking to you, and then y'all went off somewhere, y'all talked or whatever, had y'all little walk on the beach or whatever. But my question is, after the first sign of the abuse, what we saw in the library, when he got mad, when a guy came up and talked to her and him, he got mad, he walked away. Then her two friends came up, Val and Nikki, and Nikki saw his hands on her. Literally, she saw his hands on her when he was decked off in the corner where the section of the library is. Nikki, you could tell in your face you knew something was going on, but you were trying to mind your business. I wonder what was going through Nikki's mind. All your friends saw you get abused by Bobby. No one thought, this is a good girl. Ain't nobody thought, let's say something. Even if, I know they tried, but somebody didn't think to intervene with a counselor or something. A lot of people felt Stacy. They really did. And it's really sad, even though, I know Nikki tried. And she was like, you don't know what love is. And I'm just like, this is so sad to see that they really didn't do a lot. Nikki tried. I will say that she put a lot more effort than any of them did. I will give her that. But what can one person do? What can one person do to help you to stay away from somebody that is no good for you? The first flag that we see is not even when he did the physical abuse to her. It was when it wasn't when they was together. It was actually when she was neglected by her own mom. She was trying to talk to her about some things or whatever. And she would always put her off. Or even when she went out to go hang out with her friends, it really started when her mom was not really there and, giving her that one-on-one attention. So she thought, okay, Bobby is giving me attention. And then Bobby is upset about the picture that was in her locker with her friend Brian, because his picture wasn't in there. Or when she wore the skirt to school for Bobby so she can show her legs, because she wanted to just make make her boyfriend feel good. And she wanted to feel good too, but she really was doing it for Bobby. Only had eyes for Bobby, but Bobby doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And what else ticked me off was the coach. They heard her getting slammed up against the wall. And all he could really, I mean, he was trying, but you could also tell he really wasn't really caring what was going on. He was really worried about the number one wrestler on the team. I don't even know if he was number one. I'm just going to say he is, but he was really good. He was worried about him, and you have to report it and stuff like this. This is a girl that's getting abused. You didn't have no proof. You know, she lied, but you knew something was going on. Or Vince, it really didn't tell what happened after he killed Stacy. And he got back in the truck, and he had blood covered in his hands and the knife he put away. Vince, did you get back in the truck with him? Did you ride back home? What did you do, Vince? What did you do? What did you do? That's always been my question. What did you do? And my heart goes out to Stacy's mom, because she felt she let her guard down, and I don't even know how to say it. I don't wish that on nobody. I don't have kids, but I would not wish that pain on nobody, to lose a child. And I know it was hard for her. I know it was. I know she regretted a lot of things, and she was trying to get her life together. You could tell when she told her daughter, I broke up with him, and she was so happy. And I know that gave Stacy courage to break it off with Bobby. And I think after that, would they've been good. And then what really kind of upset me a little bit too was she was trying to vent to her friends. And this is what I always tell people: when somebody's trying to vent to you, when it's your friend, even if you don't like the situation, you got to sit there and listen, because you don't know what's going through their mind. Because at that bowling alley, that really moment, she needed a friend. And Nikki was like, I don't want to talk about it. That one time you wanted to talk about it, you could have prevented her from going to the bathroom by herself. And then when Carla was on the phone, she passed the phone to Carla. And Carla was so jealous of Stacy. And that's like any other woman. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. Carla, you was even trying to take up for him, because you was in love with him too. And I'm just like, Carla, you know he did something. You had a feeling. I know you did. But you was like, oh, well, Stacy's out of the way. I can get. That's how I took it as. I know that's just how I took it as. For Carla did, how Carla's was acting. She didn't. I just didn't like Carla's how she was, because, like I said, she covered for him, and then she tried to say Vince was in it. That's when you know she would have covered for this man. She was really covering for him, and then she tried to, I don't know, but all of her friends failed her. It was like 6 of them. Because when I was counting, when they was out there on the bleachers, it was 6 of them. Nikki was out there crying, and Carla was like, well, he was a good friend to you. He gave you a better position because he was a popular kid in school. So what? No one cares about being a popular kid at school when the girl's missing. And what hurt me more than anything was when Nikki was out there passing out flyers, and she looked over, and what did she see? She sees Bobby flirting with the waitress at the pizza parlor. And he was not even tore up. Your girlfriend missing, and we all out here looking and doing all kinds of stuff. You up here, hee ha ha ha. And your girlfriend 6 feet underwater, and no one thinks. And it's just like, wow. Even when the mom went to go talk to Bobby, the guy that played Bobby was a phenomenal actor, I would say, in my opinion. I could have seen, when you first watch the movie, it looks like he's going to be a good guy, and he's going to be really good for Stacy, and he's going to really love on her, and he has a plan. You know how you have a plan with your lover, and you're going to build together, and you're going to do that future together. That's what it looked like in the beginning. Then it just went left. But the guy that played Bobby, he did a good job. And I have seen him in another movie. And I love to see when actors can play good guys and bad guys, because that's when I know you can act. in my opinion. Because when you can play a bad guy and then switch and play another movie as a good guy, oh, you is a phenomenal actor to me. Because if you can't do the both, that's it. You're kind of you okay, but you ain't no good actor, in my opinion. And that goes for good actresses too. There's other movies that I can relate to when it comes to No One Would Tell. Just simple movies when it comes to domestic violence and women are staying with situations like Tracy Thurman. She Fought Alone. It was kind of like, just throwing out some movies that I can think of. It's so many movies that I can't even think of right now. I just thought of those two. But it's even just, you're dealing with somebody and you're just you're broken already because you want somebody to love you. So you're putting up with some foolishness like Stacy was. And she was always trying to make excuses for him. And he had this same sad story that every man tries to have, to suck a woman in, saying, hey, I was from a broken home. I understand that. I do. But that doesn't give you the right to put your hands on somebody to make yourself look good. And Stacy, he was buying her stuff, giving her flowers, and she thought maybe he didn't mean it. Anytime somebody putting their hands on you, they mean that. They mean that wholeheartedly. And it was so sad. And even when she showed her mama the bruise, and she was like, me and Bobby was just playing rough. And her mom was just looking like, and I'm just like, Mama, why you didn't do nothing? Come on, Mama, say something. But maybe she just didn't know what to say, because it's like her daughter is telling her something. It's just like, wow. Bobby took a life and then got a life sentence. If you have a friend that is going through domestic violence, say something. Don't let it go unheard. Thanks again for letting me join your podcast today.
You're welcome. Glad to have you on here, Alphia, and I have to say I agree with you. It's absolutely heartbreaking to think that this was just a teen girl like so many other teen girls out there who are just trying to fit in and find their place. She has her whole future ahead of her. She's just trying to make it a good one. And now it's been taken from her because of the awful actions of one seriously disturbed young man. All she did was make the kind of choice that lots of girls in her position would have made, and most times it doesn't end in tragedy like this time it did. Her mother now no longer has her daughter, and I was just so heartbroken for the mother because it looked like Stacy was all she had. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the movies that No One Would Tell reminded me of. I agree with the Tracy Thurman assessment. There was another movie about a woman in an abusive relationship. In that case, she's actually trying to get help, and people are just brushing her off. The police, namely, which is, really unfortunate that the police, of all people, would take her so lightly. And all because she was married to the guy. They were like, oh, it would have been so much easier if you weren't married to him. But it's like, that doesn't mean he has the right to threaten to kill you. And then there's The Killing Secret, which is about a young man who's in a relationship with a cheerleader at school. He's also having an affair with another girl on the side, played by Soleil Moon Frye, who some may remember as Punky Brewster. The girl played by Soleil Moon Frye ends up pregnant, and he responds by killing her, which is, a typical reaction for a guy in one of these movies. Don't want to have a baby? I'll just kill her. By the way, I do not recommend doing that. That's just, the guys in these types of movies, that's the way their minds go. Anyways, so it's not really about domestic abuse, but it's kind of reminds me of this movie because it's, another teen boy who has a promising future, and is loved by many, and he just throws it all away because he can't control his anger. And he ends up killing this girl who's like the mother. She's a child of a single mother, and it's really heartbreaking too. And in both movies, there's a scene at the lake. I'm not going to get too much into it. I don't want to give a whole lot of spoilers about No One Would Tell. But there's a scene at the lake in The Killing Secret that kind of reminds me of the final scene at the lake in No One Would Tell. There is also the movie When No One Would Listen, which, similar sounding titles, as all of these movies seem to have titles that sound similar. But it's also about domestic abuse. In this case, a woman is married to a man who abuses her, and it has a very sad ending, which I won't spoil. There's a lot of movies. If Someone Had Known. That's one starring Kelly Martin as a woman who's married to this guy. She ends up killing him. It's one of the many movies about a woman in an abusive relationship who ends up killing her spouse and the defense that follows. So yeah, there's quite a few movies about domestic abuse in Lifetime movie land, or made-for-TV movie land, as a lot of them are not actually Lifetime movies. But this is one of the only ones I can think of where it's two teens in this kind of relationship, and I think it's very important, for teenagers to understand that nobody has the right to hit you or to treat you like that, and if you don't do something about it, it can escalate and become a really unfortunate situation. So yeah, it was a very sad movie. I agree with a lot of what you said, Alphia, and I'm just so glad to have you here so that we could talk about this together and share, our thoughts. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you all enjoyed this episode and it made you think. And I recommend that you go and rewatch No One Would Tell if you haven't seen it in a while. It's on Tubi. And have a great day.